Hello, students. So, today I want to talk with you about one of the most important aspects of speech development, the outline. You wouldn't go into building a house without a plan, right? That blueprint is the structure and the foundation. It provides a guide for development. Well, that's the same for an outline. When you use an outline to deliver a speech, it makes it so much easier for you as a speaker to deliver an extemporaneous speech. Developing that outline with the goal of extemporaneous speaking in mind helps to set the stage for what will be a very successful presentation. So I want to take some time to talk with you about building a formal Roman numeral outline. Basic structure of a speech is the same, right? You have your introduction, you have your speech body, you have your conclusion. And when we think about a Roman numeral outline, it is the outline structure and design preferred for speech development. And you'll find this Roman numeral outline taught in every speech textbook ever written. So it is the most common formal outline development. So thinking about the structure, right? If you know that there's an introduction, a speech body, and a conclusion, and each one of those parts serves to achieve a particular goal, it helps you to at least know where to start when you build your speech. Keep in mind, building your speech body first is the best plan of action. You can always go back and develop your introduction and conclusion once you have your speech body written. And this will allow you to have a better idea of what it's going to take to introduce your topic and the best way to conclude. Let's look at what introductions entail. A speech introduction serves to introduce your content, right? But even more importantly, it also serves to encourage engagement. So it's vital that the very first thing that you do when you build your speech is get your audience's attention. Sometimes you hear this called the hook. Getting your audience's attention allows you to ensure that they're going to be receptive to your message. And it also allows you to start with confidence as a speaker. Some ways that you might get your audience's attention or hook them is maybe asking a question. If you can engage the audience by asking them a question that relates back to your speech message, they're going to feel as if this applies to them. It can be rhetorical, meaning you don't expect them to answer, or it can be interactive, where you really do ask a question and you get a response. You could have a meaningful quote that's relevant to your content, or you might have a shocking fact or a startling statistic. Maybe something that would make them think, wow, I had no idea. I really need to listen to this speech. Whatever you use to get attention, make sure that it's meaningful to your message. Stories are always meaningful. So if you have personal experience with the topic or you know someone who does, that can make a major impact on how your speech is developed and how you engage the audience. The next thing you want to do is ensure that you share with the audience what your qualifications and credentials are related to the topic. So you want to establish your credibility. Students often see this as citing a source of research. That's not what this means. This is about your expertise, qualifications, or maybe just a profound interest in the topic that alerts the audience to the fact that you are the right person to share the message. You also want to ensure that you have good intentions for the audience. They need to know that you have goodwill towards them. And so you want to establish your credibility by letting the audience know whether you have experience or whether you have maybe particular interests related to the topic and that you have good intentions for them. You have goodwill towards them. And then you want to create common ground with your audience. Somewhere, right, this speech is going to be extremely meaningful to your audience. What is it about this speech that really connects the audience to your topic? Sometimes if you're trying to deal with an audience that generally disagrees, this is the most important piece, right? Is finding where you have some common ground, where they can see it's about them. And with your good intentions and your qualifications, this is really going to make them want to listen. It's going to intrigue them to want to listen. And then finally, you need to preview your speech thesis. Just like an essay has a thesis, so does a speech. It's usually one sentence that encapsulates the goal of the message, or one sentence that presents the central idea. Now, what's different about a speech and an essay is that you should preview your points alongside your thesis. Give the audience a brief preview of what you will be talking about. This will help them to retain the information, follow along easily, and it sets the structure and design for the message. Good introductions are only about 10% of the overall message, so you don't want to spend a whole lot of time here. But you think, in a 10-minute speech, it's 1 to 2 minutes in length. The speech body is where you're going to tell the audience what you came to tell them, right? This is usually 2 to 7 points. Most of the speeches you do in this class will have 3 main points. When you do your informative speech, you're going to want to choose a sequential, a topical, spatial, or causal development. Sequential, right, would be great for a how-to speech. So if you were going to tell the audience how to buy their first home or how to build a basic budget, you're going to find a structure that would be procedural or sequential. It would have an order to it, right? Or if you were going to talk about something historical, you might build a timeline. We also have topical speeches, which is the most common kind of informative speech design. It's not necessarily sequential, right? But topical speeches tend to have a relationship between each point that makes sense to the audience in some way. It is up to you to decide how you're going to present that order. Oftentimes, you will follow something that makes sense. So, say for instance, I wanted to talk about treating depression. My speech body would consist of things like, what is depression, right? Who is at risk for depression? What kind of treatment options are out there, and where might someone go to seek treatment? Well, that automatically lends itself to the order in which I'd present that. Of course, you have to tell someone what depression is before they can find treatment options. So I would start with, today I'm going to tell you about what depression is. We'll talk about some of the treatment options before I talk about some of the ways that you can seek treatment, or if you know someone who has depression, you can help them seek treatment. So you can see that's a 3-part speech. I've previewed the points, and it follows a topical order, but it's not necessarily procedural. It makes sense that I would present in that order because it's how the audience would gather the information. You have spatial development. So for a speech talking about maybe weather patterns. So if we're talking about these upcoming hurricanes, I might look at them from the different areas that they are coming from, right? Or we also have a causal relationship. So if we have a problem and a cause and a solution, I might build a problem, cause, solution structure. Or we might have a cause and effect. So I would talk about the cause and the effect of an issue. So it just makes sense that those things would be built where you have your cause and your solutions, or your cause and effect. And then the speech body should include speech transitions, and those are usually presented in complete sentences. Transitions serve as signposts between main ideas. They connect the ideas, and it allows the audience to easily follow you from one point to the next in your speech. Good transitions really help the audience see a focused and structured message. It helps them to retain the information more easily, and it helps you as a speaker move smoothly from each point. And it also helps to create a clear path to the conclusion. So the transitions should be really focused and should be evident in the structure of your outline. Then we have conclusions. Conclusions wrap everything up in a nice package with, a nice bow on top, right? You don't want to leave the audience feeling frustrated, they need that closure in your message. A good conclusion really helps to end with impact, and it helps you to end with confidence. It also helps the audience to leave with a meaningful message. Conclusion should always signal the end of the speech. So the words that you choose to use, as well as your rhythm and your cadence, should bring the speech to an end. One way to do this is by using a transitional phrase. So now that I've explored introductions and speech bodies, I'd like to conclude with, right? Or let me end by. You can end by simply stating in conclusion, or finally, or to wrap it up or conclude. Now, keep in mind, if you signal the end of the speech, now's the time to wind it down and get to the end. You don't want to introduce anything brand new right here. Conclusions can leave the audience with a final, meaningful, lasting thought. You've put a lot of work into the development of the speech body. It's really important in many ways to make that conclusion memorable. If you started with a story in your introduction, you might wrap it up here in the conclusion. Tell us how that story ends. You might refer back to the characters or to the quote that you mentioned in the introduction, to the people that were impacted. If you had a shocking statistic or startling fact, here's a good time to reconnect with that, right? Remind your audience how important the topic is. It's also the time to summarize your ideas. You can restate the thesis here. So now that we've learned about what depression is and some of the treatment options and some ways that we can seek that treatment, you can access those services and help others to end their experience suffering from depression, help them get the treatment they need. So restating the thesis and summarizing your ideas is really important and impactful too. It allows the audience to think about what the things that you mentioned that were of great importance. It also allows you to provide some closure there as well. And it helps the audience to remember the most important details of your message. So don't forget how important it is to restate that thesis and summarize your ideas. Okay, so that is basic building blocks of a speech, and now you probably want to know about how that should look. And I do want to share with you guys some resources that I have for you. All right, so now that you understand what goes into the development of a speech, at least the basics of the introduction, the body, and the conclusion, let's take a look at what a formal outline looks like. And you can see here that it's developed in MLA structure. So we've got our margins, we've got our headers, right? Your last name and your page number. You see that there's a title on the page. You also see that we have a general purpose and a specific purpose. The general purpose of your speech is either to inform, to persuade, to commemorate. The specific purpose of your speech is your goal of your message. So what are you trying to achieve by the speech's end? And here you can see the specific purpose of this speech is to inform my audience on how to make lemonade. Basic, right? Goal. By the end of my speech, my audience will be able to list the steps needed to make and serve homemade lemonade. And then I have my introduction, gets attention, it establishes my credibility and goodwill for the audience. It also creates some common ground between myself and my audience, and it previews my thesis and main points. See that it's listed there. And here's the speech body. My transitions are clearly presented, and you can see that it's developed in Roman numeral style. So my main points are Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3. So it's a 3-part speech. You can see that. It ends with a conclusion there, but it's a 3-part speech body. And my main points are presented in my thesis. So today I will tell you how you can make lemonade by using the right ingredients, the right preparation, and the right serving container. And this is obviously very very simple speech design, but I wanted to give you a simple speech so you can see simply how it's put together. First of all, I want to tell you how you can make lemonade by using the right ingredients. And so you see my main point, and then you see my subpoints. My subpoints are indented to show their subordinate relationship between my main point or my main idea. And my subpoints are presented, and then I have subpoints. My subpoints, those are my subordinate points of the main point, are A, B, and C, capitalized, and my subpoints are presented as 1, 2, if I had a third point, as 3, so they're numbers, right? And those work to support the main idea, but subpoints and subpoints work together, right? So subpoints, and we could keep going here, we could have subpoints, which we do, those support the subpoint idea. And then you see I have subpoints, A, B, and C, and those are lowercase. And then I have main point or main idea 2. And you notice I only have subpoints. You don't always have to have subpoints or subpoints or subpoints. Okay, if you don't need them, and you might see here second, I will tell you how you can make lemonade using the right preparation technique. And here is something where I might actually present this to my audience. I have the materials here, and I take you through the process of making lemonade. And then the last step is to decide on the right serving container. And that's my main point, my final main point. And you can see I have subpoints and subpoints. So subpoints are A, B, and C. Subpoints are 1, 2, and 3. I might have a subpoint, which would be noted with a lowercase a, b, and c, and we can keep going like that. If you need to know more, I will gladly share that with you. And then finally, I have my conclusion. So whether fate gives you lemons from the farmer's market or you have a tree in your backyard, take Albert Hubbard's advice and make the most out of life. Make lemonade. Homemade lemonade is an excellent way to enjoy life in Florida, and fresh Florida lemons make it the best lemonade you will taste. Today, you've learned how to make lemonade using the right ingredients, the right preparation, and the right serving container. So now you know how. Leave my audience with a final thought. And I conclude. And I also ensure that I summarized my thesis and my main points. So I bring my audience to the end of my speech and I try to make it memorable. You can see structurally, it's formally structured, but I don't have it written out as a manuscript, so it's not written out word for word. And I have my sentences here, but I don't have complete sentences. And you can see that I end my sentences with ellipses. That's up to you if you want to have a complete sentence there. But be sure to allow yourself room to speak extemporaneously and to elaborate on your thoughts. Most outlines are only 1 to 2, sometimes 3 pages. And you see I have a works cited page here. My works cited page is prepared in MLA citation style. And what's important to note here is that it's double spaced throughout. It's not double spaced, right? So keep that in mind. And the reason why we know that there's 3 sources here is because of the indents. The source always begins on the line, and the indent shows that it's the second line of the source. So that is basic structure and design of the outline. This outline is a resource for you to use as a template, but I hope that by the time you end this class that you will have understanding on how to do this on your own. Of course, I'm here if you have any questions. We can talk more. Until then, be thinking about what your informative speech is going to be on. What will your topic be? It can be almost any topic of your choice. I do want to make sure that it's research worthy. I'm not really sure how to make lemonade is considerably research worthy. If you wanted to teach us how to do something, make sure it's something like how to build a basic budget or how to buy our first home, something that would actually take some time to research and develop. But there's lots of other topics out there. And by the time we meet next time, I hope you will have that topic in mind so you can sign up for your speech.